Tonight's first contestant in our budget battle between the think tanks is the Roosevelt Institute Campus Network. Have you heard of the Roosevelt Institute? I hadn't, but it's been around a long time. It was created by FDR's family and the former president's granddaughters on the board. It's a progressive group. Warren Beatty was once on the board. Roosevelt's Campus Network is the first student-run think tank, and they were given $200,000 to come up with a budget that would be good for America. Hillary Doe is here to tell us what they came up with. So, who gave you the $200,000?
We got the $200,000 from the Peterson Foundation. All the grantees received the same amount of money to go through this budget process.
So, and I give credit to the Peterson Foundation for stimulating this discussion. So, what are you going to do to the budget?
So what you'll see in our budget's a lot different than what you'll see in other budgets. We aren't a bunch of budget economists. It's not just based on equations, it's based on values. So when we created it, we engaged 3,000 young people across the country and asked them what their values were, what their priorities for the future were, and then helped them design a plan to get there.
What's the ideal budget?
Basically what you'll see is we stabilize the debt. We care a lot about fiscal security. The burden of the debt is going to fall on my generation more than on anyone else's. So that was a high priority.
But how do you stabilize the debt? You don't touch Social Security or Medicare. No cuts.
We actually do really control healthcare costs, though. That was a serious priority.
How?
So we increased competitiveness across the country, both in Medicare and outside in the private market. We create regional markets in Medicare so that states can compete with one another within their market. We really rely first on letting the private market do its job, removing the monopoly exemption, giving people an opportunity to lower costs that way. If it doesn't work, in 10 years, we have a hammer, and we put the public option down.
Public option. My audience has an opinion about that. You're going to reduce the debt somehow with more spending. You want universal pre-kindergarten, increases in the safety net, more mass transit, more worker retraining programs. And how do you pay for all that?
We had this plan scored in the same way that the CBO was scored and proved, essentially, that you can make those investments that we care about while also stabilizing the debt over time. We do it with healthcare costs. We reform income taxes, give everyone who makes less than $1.4 million a tax cut, including cuts on corporations across the board. But we also close all the
that was it.
loopholes and
Students voting to cut corporate tax rates by 3%.
This is not a budget by ideologues. It's not a budget, just by progressives or just by conservatives. We sought out both sides.
But you'll have a carbon tax.
We do institute a carbon tax for environmental reasons.
You'll have a too-big-to-fail tax on banks.
That's true. Yep, we sure do. It affects 12 banks, making over $200 billion.
So doesn't that encourage the 13th bank not to try to make more money, to have to pay more tax? Actually,
we just break up the banks to ensure that there's no volatility, over time in the system. And, despite all the boos in the audience, this was a democratized budget process. So the other people that you'll hear from tonight and the vast majority of budgets you hear are from one economist who's had a plan for a long time. And I really want to underscore that we weren't just engaging one ideological spectrum. We were engaging young people as a whole.
You want to end wars by 2015. Well, I think we're all for that. Remove Cold War-era troops from Europe, and we do have 50,000 soldiers in Germany. I thought we won that war.
We did too. Actually, we do decrease some our defense spending, but it's really not much. By 2035, it's only $200 billion. And we do it by making the system more efficient. We're removing troops from places where we aren't really fighting wars and updating the types of fighting that we're doing with more nimble forces, investments in cybersecurity, and the removal of troops from wars that have no end date by 2015.
Let's hear what our judges have to say about the proposed budget from the Roosevelt Institute. David,
First of all, she deserves a lot of credit for putting up with the boos from the audience. Yeah, everybody should express their opinions. Congratulations for holding your own. All right, I like
congratulate you. That's tough to deal with.
I like her suggestion that states should compete for insurance. That's a free market decision. I don't disagree with the fact that a lot of banks should be broken up, and I think the market would have forced them to break up if we had not had our bailouts of the banking system. So let the market work. But in terms of more money for education, when has more money for education actually led to kids getting smarter? I mean, we have spent billions, if not trillions of dollars in trying to educate kids, and we have seen the test scores come down. So more money does not necessarily solve social problems.
On both sides of the aisle, the return on investment is huge, especially for the area that we're targeting. We're not talking about
I haven't seen it in test
But what he
scores.
says is true. It's been $90 billion a year.
We haven't made these investments. So we're talking about a specific age group. We're talking about investing in universal pre-K. That decreases intergenerational poverty. It pulls people out
I
of
used to be a
future
teacher in Chicago, in a very tough section of Chicago, and if we weren't forced to use teaching methods that we as teachers knew were bad, we would lose our federal funding on certain programs. So the federal government was forcing programs down our throats that we didn't think worked, the kids didn't think worked, but we had to use them just in order to get more money from the Fed.
Sandra, what's your thought?
A couple things. Not addressing entitlements at all concerns me. I'm curious, if you were serving this group of young people, did they ask for more taxes? Because you're talking about making income tax rates more progressive, creating new too-big-to-fail taxes, as you were mentioning. Are they aware of that, what that would do to job growth in this country?
Actually, overall, if you look at the plan, we do decrease taxes overall from the CBO baseline. So they aren't asking for more taxes, but they're asking for taxes that are more equitable. And
just
that's
taxes that don't affect them.
No, and frankly, I really commended a group of 3,000 young people thinking long-term about their future and deciding, you know, I really do want a social safety net to be there for me. I want something that's responsive. I lived through the Great Recession, and I want those opportunities available to both catch me and serve as a trampoline to spring me back into this workforce, and we're willing to pay for it.
First of all, I want to congratulate you for putting up with this. And with all due
The audience
respect,
he's referring to.
here's the difference. I do this for a living, so you're not going to bother me. Being the only liberal at Fox, I can get a pretty thick skin.
Well, you're not the only liberal at Fox.
Well, there's damn few of us. All of us could caucus in a phone booth. Let me put it that way. I commend you on a lot of different things, but I would make the single-payer plan immediate. Number one. You put my good friend David here is exactly wrong. Test scores have gone up in the last 2 years, significantly.
Last 2 years.
Yes.
But we've had more government spending for 40 years.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And by the way,
if it doesn't work, there is.
And by the way, I do think it's a legitimate issue about entitlements. I mean, it seems to me that there ought to be taxes. You ought to pay taxes if you make over, it's $106,000 a year is where you stop paying payroll taxes. As far as I'm concerned, you ought to pay it for as much as you earn. So if
and
you
a
earn
number
$1
of
million,
these plans tonight will be proposing that.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
And actually, I didn't get a chance to address it, but we do pay for entitlements. You do pay a larger, Social Security tax on a larger percentage of your income.
And the other last thing I would say is investment in things like transportation and infrastructure are things that put people back to work. You let the great free market work in this country. You saw it happen. You put us into the greatest recession in history.
Right.
And there ought to be a tax on these big banks, and I congratulate you. I think it's brilliant, and I think that, as I said, don't pay any attention to this because these people are slightly behind the curve on this. You're right there.
So you'll appreciate our 20...
And audience, let me ask you to chill on the booing here. We want to give people a chance to present their point. Thank you, judges. We'll have the official vote later when we return to conservative think tanks face off.